clock on my nightstand blinked its crimson digits. 3:17 a.m. Darkness cloaked my room, and the silence of the night was only broken by the falling of a light rain. I was restless, so kept my eyes wide open. For some reason, an unease had settled over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As an 18-year-old male, I had never been one to have irrational fears, but tonight, an unsettling feeling gnawed at my gut. Something had woken me, but I wasn't sure what. A peculiar noise, a soft shuffle, reached my ears, interrupting the stillness of the night. I dismissed it initially, assuming it was typical nocturnal sounds. Yet as I strained to listen, I knew I had definitely heard something. Curiosity got the better of me, and I reluctantly dragged myself out of bed. The cold floor bit into my bare feet as I tiptoed through the corridor. The house was silent, broken only by the faint creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. The only light was a dim glow from the moon, casting shadows along the hallway. Tiptoeing down the stairs, I entered the living room, my eyes squinting against the darkness. Something was definitely wrong. I felt a light breeze on my face and realized one of the windows was open. I was sure I had closed all the windows. I approached cautiously, my senses on high alert. The night air, crisp and cool, could be felt through the gap in the window pane. Panic threatened to claw its way to the surface, but I clung to reason, rationalizing that perhaps the window had been left ajar, a simple oversight on my part. A slight movement in the shadows halted my breath. My eyes darted to the corner of the room where an indistinct figure stood. I was barely able to see in the dimness of the room, but there was definitely someone there. The room seemed to constrict around me, and panic gripped my chest as I fumbled for the light switch. I had never been in a situation like this before. I had imagined how I would react, that fight or flight scenario. It was always fight, but I tell you, in reality, flight seemed like the better option. The silhouette emerged, a stranger, an unwelcome visitor in my home. My heart pounded in my ears, and the air felt thick with an unspoken threat. I saw his twisted smile, and time seemed to stand still as we locked eyes, mine wide with terror, his... Well, I don't know, because in that moment I knew I had to run. I turned the moment he lunged forward. Panic surged through my veins as I sprinted towards the safety of my bedroom, the thud of my heart drowning out all reason. The intruder's footsteps were closing in behind me. As I reached my bedroom door, adrenaline-fueled strength surged through me, and I slammed it shut with a force that seemed to defy the laws of physics. My hands fumbled frantically for the lock, and with trembling fingers I somehow managed to lock it. Breathing heavily, I pressed my back against the door, eyes fixed on the doorknob. My breath caught in my throat as the intruder started trying to bash his way in, all the while shouting obscenities and threats. My eyes darted around the room in search of a makeshift barricade. I grabbed a heavy dresser, hastily dragging it across the floor to block the door. The sounds outside intensified as the intruder's frustration grew. Fear gripped me as I retreated to the farthest corner of my room, phone clutched tightly in my trembling hand. One would think dialing would be simple, but my shaking hands made it an excruciating task. The seconds stretched into an agonizing crawl, and as I finally got through to the dispatcher, I knew my door wouldn't hold much longer. My mind raced, desperately looking for a plan of escape as I explained my situation, still hopeful that help would arrive. The intruder continued his assault on the door, the dresser groaning under the relentless pressure. My gaze flickered towards the window, my best and only escape route. Summoning every ounce of courage, I managed to work it open. The night air rushed in, carrying with it a mixture of rain and the scent of damp earth. I glanced outside, assessing the height of my escape. The distance to the ground seemed surmountable. The banging against the door grew more urgent, as if the intruder sensed my desperation, which added an extra layer of apprehension. Summoning a burst of adrenaline, I climbed onto the windowsill, casting one last terrified glance over my shoulder. The door groaned under the relentless assault, and the realization struck that my window of escape was rapidly closing. With a hesitant breath, I jumped out, plummeting onto the hard, cold ground. At that same moment I heard the sirens and knew help was almost there. Looking up, I saw the intruder for an instant, and then he was gone. When the police arrived, they combed through the house, but the intruder was nowhere to be found. With a shaky voice, I managed to give a detailed description of the intruder. It turned out that my account matched the modus operandi of a serial intruder responsible for a string of robberies in the area. In the subsequent investigation, my description became a crucial piece of the puzzle, a breakthrough that law enforcement had been desperately seeking. Unfortunately, the intruder was never captured, but there have been no more robberies reported in the area since. I had just gotten home from a long night of stocking shelves at my local grocery store. I worked the closing shift, so I usually got home around midnight. I shared a cheap apartment with my roommate Mark. We weren't in the best of neighborhoods, but I just felt lucky to have a place to live that wasn't my parents' basement. I threw my jacket on the coat rack next to the front door and walked into the kitchen to rummage through the fridge for something to eat. I had just pulled a frozen burrito out of the freezer when I noticed something weird. My bedroom door had been slightly open when I walked by the hallway. I know this doesn't sound strange at first, but I specifically remembered closing it that morning when I left for work. I like my privacy, so I always remember to shut my door when I leave for the day. I stepped back into the living room and looked down the hall. "Hello?" I called. There was just dead silence. Not wanting to let the fear get the better of me, I walked across the living room and flicked on the hallway light switch. "Mark, is that you?" I asked. Mark had always been a bit of an odd guy, so I couldn't help but think that maybe he was trying to play some sort of weird prank on me, maybe waiting to jump out of my closet or something when I entered my room. When I finally got to the bedroom door, I gently pushed it open. The light from the hallway illuminated a large portion of the room. I looked around, definitely feeling the creepy vibes. There was no one there, and nothing looked out of the ordinary. Just the usual, my twin bed, with my nightstand just to the left. I closed the door shut and walked back into the kitchen. I popped my dinner into the microwave and pressed the start button. While that was cooking, I turned on the television, ready to put on a scary movie to watch and relax. Suddenly I heard a muffled thump coming from down the hall. At first I thought it was the neighbors or something. They can be pretty loud sometimes, and it's not unusual to hear a loud bump in the night. But then it happened again, and this time I could tell for sure it was coming from down the hall. "Mark?" I called once more. Just then the microwave beeped and I nearly had a heart attack. "Yeah, sorry, dropped something," I could hear him say through the door. I'll admit I felt a little better knowing that Mark was home. I walked back into the kitchen to get my food, and that's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Mark. "Hey dude, running a little late here at work. Could you please leave the door unlocked for me?" My stomach dropped to the floor, and I instantly felt my anxiety skyrocket. I texted back, "Wait, you're still at work?" He responded only a few seconds later. "Yeah, why?" At that moment there was another noise from the hall and I looked up. The silhouette of a large man was standing there holding what appeared to be a butcher's knife. I turned and ran towards the front door, hearing the heavy clunk of the man's boots behind me. He wasn't running. Instead, it sounded like he was slowly walking, taking his time. I didn't stop to look back. I ran down the emergency staircase and out into the parking lot where I called the cops. The cops showed up just a few minutes later. They went upstairs and searched my apartment, but they said they didn't find anyone. What they did find still terrifies me to this day. As they were searching the apartment, the cops found a note left on the kitchen table, held under a salt shaker. On that note, only one word was written: soon. I was a mere 22 years old when this harrowing incident unfolded, etching itself into my memory a year and a half ago. Freshly moved into my very first apartment, the excitement of newfound independence quickly turned into a chilling ordeal that would forever alter my sense of security. As I busied myself with the process of settling into my new abode, the automatic lock on the entrance door seemed like a trivial detail, an unassuming feature that would soon prove to be both a blessing and a curse. It was an ordinary day, and I found myself engrossed in a phone conversation with my boyfriend as I headed towards the entrance of the apartment complex to retrieve my mail. Returning to my apartment, I casually perched on my bed, still absorbed in the conversation while sorting through the mail. The phone, unfortunately, had other plans, deciding to make a break for it and landing just out of my reach beneath the bed. Obliged to retrieve it, I lowered myself to the floor, and it was then that my world tilted on its axis. A sight that would haunt my nightmares unfolded beneath the bed. There was someone there, an intruder hidden in the shadows beneath my haven. My eyes widened, and a strangled gasp caught in my throat as I grappled with the instinct to scream. The figure lay motionless, their back turned towards me, head bowed to the chest, rendering their face shrouded in the darkness. In the midst of the surreal horror, I had to stifle my own terror, aware that any sudden noise might alert the intruder to my presence. Rapid thoughts raced through my mind, a torrent of fear and confusion, as I clutched the phone in my trembling hand. In an effort to remain calm, I forced a casual tone and uttered, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just going to take a shower and call you back." The bathroom, my makeshift sanctuary, was mere steps away. I briskly walked in, locking the door behind me, and turned on the shower to mask any sounds. Swiftly, with a heart pounding in my ears, I made the decision to escape. My apartment, conveniently on the first floor, offered an unconventional exit, a window through which I hastily jumped. Once outside, I hastily made the call to the police. Summoned by my distress call, the police instructed me to wait nearby while keeping an eye on the apartment complex. Huddled behind a car across the street, my boyfriend arrived, a reassuring presence in the face of impending danger. The fading summer light cast an eerie glow on the scene as we watched, anxiously, the open bathroom window and the entry door. The arrival of the police brought a mix of relief and trepidation. Handing over my keys, I waited with bated breath for the revelation of the sinister intruder's identity. Moments later, 2 officers emerged, gripping a thin and weary-looking man. His eyes bore a hint of madness, yet he offered no resistance. The officer who had comforted me during my anxious wait revealed the chilling truth. The man had stationed himself outside my bathroom door, armed with one of my own kitchen knives, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The unsettling revelation unfolded that the intruder, despite his menacing intentions, was a homeless man. The authorities swiftly relocated him to a mental hospital, but the scars of that traumatic encounter lingered. Shattered illusions of safety compelled my boyfriend to move in with me the very next day. I am still haunted to this day of the realities that can unfold within the seemingly secure confines of one's own home.